Going on, guys? So I've been working on a lot of projects, and I'm sure you guys probably see me post a few cryptic messages about certain issues that I run into, and just kind of my overall love and admiration for programmers and all that good stuff. But as I start building more solutions and different tools, I figured I can start sharing them out to the world instead of keeping them tucked away in a private repo. So I started deploying some of my tools, and one of the ones I wanted to show you guys and put out for public consumption is my lab configuration generator API. So the whole reason that this came about is as I'm studying for my CCIE service provider, um, you start getting into some of the more complex labs, and going over a few devices. You start having to do a lot of prep work on the labs, and you quickly find out that a lot of your setup time is in just the base configurations of the devices. If I'm doing an MPLS lab, and I'm doing so let's say I'm doing an MPLS traffic engineering lab, I don't want to spend 30 minutes doing OSPF and all the other configurations and then all the other base configurations to get my core working in my network if I just want to focus on that particular technology. So what I did was I essentially dissected multiple. Oh, sorry. And then another requirement that I had for this is that I wanted a way that I can generate device configurations for different types of devices. So obviously, primarily, most people are Cisco these days, but you got so many different vendors, and one that I like playing with is Cumulus Linux. So I wanted a way to, if I wanted to swipe out a device, I wanted to throw in a Cumulus Linux box. Um, Instead of my Cisco box, I didn't want to go through and reconfigure a whole bunch of options and settings in a configuration file in order to get that generated. So I wanted to use the same model, essentially, the basic key value pairs in a model to generate different types of config devices. Now I know there's other tools out there that do something similar to this, but building something yourself is rewarding, and then doing something to the spec of what you really wanted to do is awesome. And it's eventually I'm gonna want to tie this into being able to talk to the evng API and actually push configurations to your devices, but that's longer term. But I'm still building out all the basic templates. So essentially, this API that I hosted out on my AWS server, it allows you to generate Cisco configs, and this is just a high level demo. So everything is not fully working because of the fact that I just a demo. So I cut out some features on purpose. But if you wanted to interact with the API, I'm going to show you two different ways in this video, and then essentially these models are the ones that are going to be submitted or supported, so you just change those variables. So we'll walk through on how to get it working. So ideally what will happen is as I'm talking to my API, you see this JSON structure here. This is essentially the representation of a device in my network. Now this might seem like a lot, but what I try to do with my examples is I try to implement every single feature that I have implemented thus far for each model, just so you can see the full extent of the feature. So this is a lot more in depth, but I got it to the point where you can do OSPF configurations on the interface. You can do global configurations with OSPF. You can do your SNMP versions. It's intelligent enough to know which configuration lines to add into the devices. Uh, like I said, it's pretty straightforward. So do not mess with the keys on the model. You can change the values all day and generate your own configs if you want, but these keys, and when I release the actual full API documentation, you'll see all the data models and how to build devices and do everything on your own. But for right now, we're gonna stick it to this. So I'm gonna show you guys how to do this with Postman first. So essentially, preparation, you're going to need a computer running Python 3. You're going to need the request library installed, and you want to clone the repo and run this file. So I'm going to show you guys both ways, actually. I'm going to show you two ways. I'm going to show you how to do it with Postman, and then also how to do this with a programmatic way of using the Python script here that I have. It's not really a client, but it allows you to just post this JSON data model to the API, and it'll extract it'll generate your configs for you. So let's see what this looks like in Postman. So the URL that this is sitting at is actually, well, this is my git clone. Where is, it's gonna be down here. So right here, this is the URL that the API is hosted at. Actually, we're gonna show you guys in Postman first, so it makes a little bit more sense, and I'll hide this because I don't want you to see this quite yet. So essentially, the way this works is that I actually, in my AWS server, this is sitting behind an Nginx proxy, so I got some magic going on. So you don't actually see the exposed server. It's the service itself. The service itself is not exposed. It's proxied. But essentially, this is the URL that you're going to use to communicate with, and then this is the endpoint where that service, this LCG service, resides at. And like I said, the data structures are pretty straightforward. My basic request model is that I usually give it options in data, and then the data that you're supplying to the API, and then that API will ingest that, consume it. So it's pretty straightforward. The one thing it is accepting application JSON, so you're going to make sure you want to set that as your for your header content type for your in your headers for your content type headers. You want to make sure you're setting that so that way when the request is sent over the wire, it's sent in serialized as JSON. And essentially, yeah, let's see how it works. And like I said, so once you send this request, this is what you get back. And I'm not doing anything fancy. The API is just really, really simple right now, just like I said, for demo purposes. But this is a sample of what the configuration looks like if I wanted to do send this request to my API. So like I said, you can go in and see how it says my host name is there. I can change that and say R50, and then we'll send that request again. So R50. So like I said, it's pretty straightforward. I'm not doing anything too special here, but it's pretty cool for consumption. And then essentially you can write your own scripts to generate configurations for you on the fly, or if you want to write your own application, your own front end that talks to this as a back end service, you could as well. So there's a lot of possibilities. So let's show you guys programmatically, and this is what it would look like if you were to clone the repo, this repo here into your folder. So I'm gonna go and open up in PyCharm, and I already have the repo cloned here. So one thing I didn't do, and just to show for what it would look like for you guys if you probably don't have the ideal setup. So say that you just did a git clone on the repo and you got all the files and you got the readme and you got the LCG access file, which is here. Now, obviously, you probably can't run it because you probably don't have the request library in there. So if I try to run this, you notice that I have that issue. But what I like doing is virtual enms. So if you use PyCharm, they have a really cool feature of setting that up in your project for the project interpreter. But you can use a virtual env, or you can use your main Python interpreter. It's up to you. So for me, I like using virtual enms for each of mine services. So we'll go there and we'll add a new virtual environment. And so what we just did is we're setting the interpreter for my project, so that way Python is being run in its own privatized environment there. So, and if you don't know about virtual environments, I would recommend going and do some research on it. It's a great way. It's another layer of, I wouldn't say virtualization, but it's another layer of separation when it comes to source code management. Most people usually try to use their main Python interpreter for their on their machines, and developing that way ends up running into issues because either you have too many packages that might conflict with other packages, or just a lot of bloat on the system for stuff that maybe one or two packages are needed for a particular module. So virtual enms are awesome. That's pretty much all I gotta say. So with that being said, I'm gonna go to my terminal down here, and we're gonna want to do pip install request. And if you're not familiar with the request library, it is a library that is used for interacting with RESTful APIs. I mean, it's not really just RESTful APIs. You can do normal web calls with it, but it's a great library that's written in Python that allows you to interact with APIs. So that's why I'm using it with this particular video, because it's simple to download and it's really easy to use once you get the package installed. So we'll go down and we'll show you what it looks like programmatically. So like I said, these data models are huge, but they're not really that big because, like I said, I implemented every particular feature that's used. And in the programmatic style, I gave you two different data models. I gave you the Cumulus model, which would represent what it would be on a Cumulus device, and the Cisco model. You'll notice like there's most of the keys are the same. The only difference is that once you start getting into the hierarchical nuances of different configuration types, they're approached in different ways, especially when you get into the Cumulus routing world, because it's more built on the Linux routing system or the Linux interface routing system or whatever, composed to Cisco. So their hierarchy is a little different. So I had to readdress the model specifically for them, in order to do that for the Cumulus boxes. But that's why structure wise it may look a little different, but for the most part I try to keep the keys the same, just so that's synonymous across the different node types that are supported. So let's see what this looks like programmatically now. So since we got that employed, let's go ahead and play. Perfect. So you can see that we made the request to the API, and this is actually pulling up my Cisco device, as you can see here. Now, let's say that we want to play around, and let's go ahead and do a cumulus model. So let's switch out the variable here to JSON the cumulus, and then we hit play. And then there we go. Then we got a cumulus configuration. Like I said, it's straightforward. It's not as difficult as I don't think it is, but it's really cool to see certain projects that you develop being used in real time. So I figured, start releasing it to the masses and see how you guys like it. Maybe if you find bugs, you can help me out with that, or even if you have features, I can add you to the repo, and if you want to start contributing for development, you could. But yeah, the API is free for public consumption, so feel free to use it as much as you want. Like I said, just follow these guides. You can just go ahead and start manipulating the data in these models in order to generate your own configs. But it gives you the opportunity to really start testing some more of your skills. I got another service, but I'm not going to show you guys that right now. But it's a really cool auditing service that I wrote. It's really really awesome. So I eventually, when I get ready to release that, I can't wait to show you guys that one. But yeah. So if you guys have any questions, if you like what you saw, let me know. If you have any requests, if you want to see something particular, let me know. I totally would appreciate if you guys subscribe. That would be pretty awesome. It seeing the feedback lets me know that people appreciate what I do. This is a lot of effort, and I do this for me, but I also do this for you guys too. So if it's not something that you really care about, then I won't waste my time on certain things. I'm trying to make it public and just learn it for myself. But if it's something that you're interested in, I don't mind taking the extra time and try to make it as publicly consumable as possible, just to pay it forward. So yeah, subscribe, like, comment, and feedback if you have any. All right, later.